Hey everyone, and welcome to another Kinsta Talks episode. My name is Marcel Bootsman, and I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager for the EMEA region at Kinsta. And today in this Kinsta Talks episode, I can be very happy to see Tor-Björn Fjellner on the other side. Hi Toby, how are you doing?
Hi, Marcel. I'm fine. Hope you're fine as well.
I'm fine as well. Nice to hear. Yes, Tor-Björn is part of a group of people that we sponsor through the Kinsta Community Sponsorship Program. And in this call, we'd like to discuss, talk about, inform the viewers about what Tor-Björn is up to in the WordPress community, what he has done, and I'll ask a few questions about that. Toby, because friends can say Toby.
Yeah, you're allowed to say Toby. That's fine.
Yes, excellent. So, for the viewers that don't know you, can you give a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah. So I am Swedish, if you haven't guessed that yet, although I live in Barcelona in northeastern Spain. And I am a linguist. So over the last almost 20 years, I have regularly been working a lot with translations. And that is what brought me into contributing to WordPress when I started using WordPress for a blog I was doing, which was about my other half of my life, which is about technical stuff, project management, IT, and telecom, and so on. But I will quickly go back to WordPress. So I needed to translate some themes and plugins to use them in Russian, actually, and in Swedish. And that's how I come in contact with contributing to WordPress. That first contact with a theme developer was like 2011, I guess. But then when I had some downtime with less work, I just happened to spend some time contributing Swedish translations in 2017. This just happened to be about a time when some people were leaving, and I just happened to pick up a much needed spot of making sure that there were Swedish translations of WordPress core and the most important plugins and themes. So I very quickly got deeply involved on that. And soon enough, I was involved not only with the Swedish translations, but with translation of the WordPress interface as a whole through the Polyglots team, which is the global contributor team that makes WordPress available in some 50 different language versions. And what I do here is trying to help new people find their ways around. And when someone starts contributing more translations and making sure that translations are of good quality for a new language or something, then I may help them with some tricks and ideas on how they can grow their community of contributors, how they can become more sustainable, how they can work in a smarter, more efficient way to spend less time on at least some of the repetitive tasks, which of course is a funny thing to say when we start diving into what I am doing, but nevertheless. So that's what I'm doing in WordPress. I have been speaker in several places. I give now and then feedback to developers on how they would be better off tracing some strings or building their interface to make it easier to translate in a good way to many different languages. For instance, one such thing that many people get stuck on is that there are big differences in how you handle translations of a string when there is a number in it. It's not that you can just say, okay, if it's singular, like one, then we do this. If it's anything else, then we do this. That works in English. That works in surprisingly many languages. But already with French, there is actually a problem because French will use singular for zero as well, which English doesn't do. And that is the small one. Then when you come to, well, I speak Russian fluently, for instance, every such pair of singular and plural in Russian you need to translate in 3 different versions. And still I'm grateful for that because in Arabic they have 6 versions of every plural string to make it work with any number.
Exactly. So this is really something that thanks for your introduction and thanks for clarifying what you do in the WordPress community and in what ways you contribute. Thanks for that. Also let's check out a little bit more about what developers can do to make their theme or plugin better translatable. You mentioned the plural and the singular differences between languages, locales, as we call them in WordPress. And what would you say to a developer that is not yet aware of the translation possibilities with WordPress, how they should start educating themselves and or their colleagues to be a better developer in line with translation options in WordPress?
So the first thing, of course, is to make your code translatable in the first place. It's quite straightforward, but yes, when you need to get into a habit that whenever you have a string that is printed anywhere, you need to make it translatable by encapsulating it in a translation call. And that's quite straightforward to do, although you need to add a bit more keystrokes than perhaps would be perfectly convenient for you. But still, with modern tools, you should be able to get most of those things happening more or less automatically anyway. I mean, to correctly make a theme or a plugin translatable, you need to always indicate its translation. It's called domain, but I'm not sure what more word we would need here. But if your plugin has the slug Akismet, for instance, it probably won't because there is another plugin that has that already. But every
This is an
translation
example. It's
call,
okay.
yeah, it's an example. Yeah, so text domain. So you need to indicate this text domain in every translation call you do. There is one place where you're allowed to not do this, and that is in WordPress core, which means that if you skip this little thing, then you will try to get your thing translated through the translation tools of WordPress core instead. And if your string wasn't there, well, then it won't get translated and it will be shown in your original language, which technically might be any language, but, and this is next thing to do, make sure that all things that would be visible to users are written in US English. And that is not because it must always be US English and that is the only way we could talk. No, we are much nicer than that. But technically, the WordPress infrastructure needed to choose some language as the source language that is used by default. And it just happens to be US English. So make sure that all strings that are visible to users are in US English because then they can get nicely translated. And if someone is using your plugin and they have selected US English as their language, WordPress will simply not call any translation functions in that case, which means that whatever string you put in there will be used. So even if, let's say, you live in South Africa and you would like to use South African English as the language in your plugin, no, please use US English because otherwise all nice people from Texas and Michigan may have problems understanding your code, right?
Those are some good takeaways there, Toby. So for developers, make sure that all the strings you output, whether these are visible in the backend or on the front end, make sure you encapsulate them in the translation function. All the details of this can be found on make.wordpress.org/polyglots.
Yes, well, you're always welcome to join Slack and ask away in our Slack channel, Polyglots. But of course, the developer documentation has most of the information about what you need to do to just make this work. But then when it boils down to how you can do this in a good way, there is a little bit information to be found, but it's more about how you can communicate with the community to find people who would be happy to translate. But I did make a talk about this specifically a couple of years ago on WordCamp Europe in Greece. So you can find a video with me diving into some 7, 8 different typical pitfalls, and
Okay.
it's based on an article that I have got on my own site. So if it's okay with you, I can give a link to that we can include in the show notes or comments or something.
Yeah, I can mention it right now so that people know where to find it, and that a link will be provided in the video description. So I'll continue with
Nice.
that. Yeah, that's really good, Toby. You know, the presentation, most presentations of WordPress events like WordCamps and WP meetups are recorded and stored on WordPress.tv.
WordPress.tv, yeah.
Yes.
And
So
this one is available there as well.
yeah, excellent. So we'll provide the link to this presentation in the video description to make it easy for people to access this video. Okay, so we talked about some tips, pitfalls for developers. Besides the developer,
of course, there is more to be done.
Of
because
course.
we deal with translation of strings. And if you have too short strings, then it may be hard for the translator to understand the context. And there are two ways to solve this. One is to provide more context. You could do that via comments to the translators that in many cases will be included in the translation interface. You can see how is this thing used, or perhaps there is a variable included somewhere, and then you may have a quick indication about what is this variable about? What kind of text would this variable contain? So that's one thing. Another thing is making sure that you give a complete sentence, because then also if you give me a part of a sentence to translate, then first of all, it may be hard for me to understand exactly how to translate it. And secondly, it may not fit together in such a nice way in other languages. For instance, the English word ago is nice. You can just say, okay, we've got the string here is ago, please translate it. And then I understand that, of course, you will put some kind of time or number before this string, and then you will put a string and you will expect this to work. In Swedish, for instance, ago is translated with a split preposition that comes in two parts. So 1 year ago, where 1 year is 1 year, of course, in Swedish would be ett år. But ago is translated as för sedan. So för ett år sedan would be the correct translation. And to make this work, yes, you need to use a placeable variable, and you need to give me the full string so that I can build the string in the right way. And for people who know German, they also know that you have a different order of words in a typical sentence. And that is another argument why you shouldn't try to glue parts of sentences together, because if it works in English, it would work anywhere. Well, it won't.
Not always, no.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
I think in Dutch, you've got some typical changes in structures also compared to English that will break unless the developer thinks through and gives you the right amount of things to translate.
Yeah, definitely. Another great round of tips there for translating WordPress and making it possible for your theme or plugin to be translatable in as much languages
to make
as you
it
can.
available. Yeah, to make it work nicely and look nicely.
Exactly.
Another such thing is, of course, adjusting your theme or plugin for right to left languages. I mean, if someone uses a site in Arabic or Persian or some other right to left languages, they expect a lot of things to flush to the other side than you are used to. And there are tools that will help you with this. But if you are ever in doubt, you're welcome to the Polyglots channel and ask us to have a quick look. I'm no expert. I have only worked in a couple of Arabic-speaking countries, but I don't speak Arabic. But we've got people who can quickly look at this and they can explain if there anything you need to fix.
That's really nice. Already packed with tips in this talk. I really enjoy it. I want to switch a little bit to the polyglots and the translation process, because
Yeah.
we have GlotPress, that is a system that enables translators to translate these American US English strings to whatever language. Have there been any noteworthy developments in the last few months to the GlotPress system?
Well, some developers are maintaining GlotPress and they make sure that things continue working even when we are updating WordPress and PHP and so on. So that is something that has been happening lately. I think a couple of days ago, they released 4.0.2 just to make GlotPress readily available with some PHP compatibility things in place. But we've got a lot of extra stuff in GlotPress that we're using on translate.wordpress.org. And that started already a couple of years ago. So it is now possible, if you are contributing WordPress translations, to connect a usage key from your own OpenAI subscription or a few others. I'm not sure about DeepL, but we have a few machine translation providers that you can easily include in your interface on translate.wordpress.org to speed up your translation speed substantially. Do actually a similar thing myself, but when I translate more than just a few strings, I usually do it in a small software called PU Edit, where I also have access through its Pro version to machine translation of quite good quality. It's using DeepL. It isn't perfect for sure, but it allows me to translate probably 4 or 5 times faster than I would be writing everything out by hand.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, that's a good process change there for you to improve your translation speed.
And actually, the guy who knows best how to use this interface is Dutch. It's Peter Smith.
Peter Smits, yeah, that's him.
Yeah,
Yeah, he does a lot of translation work, and I really appreciate him working
a
on the
lot of
Dutch
energy
translation
there.
team.
Yeah.
Lots of energy, yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's really great to see the community and the international community adapt WordPress and translate WordPress to their own languages, because that makes WordPress more accessible to people who don't speak English and who can't read English. Not just for agencies or freelancers, but also for website owners to just
Yeah.
use WordPress in their own language, which can be very comforting, of course.
And if you're a developer, just keep in mind that actually more than half of all WordPress sites worldwide are using some other language than US English.
Wow, yeah,
So
those are big
if you
numbers.
don't enable translations, you may be missing a big pool of users.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally think that if developers are watching this talk and they are not aware of the things they need to do to make their plugin or theme translatable, that they have a look at the documentation and find it out. And if they have any other questions that are not handled in the documentation, then reach out to the Polyglots channel on Slack to get even more answers to the questions, of course.
Yeah.
And maybe other questions will come out of that as well.
Yeah. And I think one more thing is very important to mention right now. Dear developers, please know that unchecked, unvetted machine translation may be very good, but it isn't perfect. And if you translate to 15 different languages that you don't know, you are doing things the wrong way. You are creating, by clicking a few buttons, you may create hours of work for unpaid volunteers in various places. And you're upsetting people in the community, and you may get yourself enemies, although you just want to help. So please, before you go that way, do get in touch with us, and we will get you some good ideas on how you can actually do this in a good way that is community friendly also.
Wow, that's a great thing to emphasize for the people who are watching, to just ask instead of assume that what you are doing is the right way, and then basically you end up putting a lot of people, volunteer people, to work on stuff that might not be very good and needs to be redone eventually. So yes, ask.
Or I mean, I got like a huge translation that someone obviously did with AI. I fixed a lot of strings, and then the day after, they uploaded their same translation suggestions again. Which means that all these already translated strings, there were suggestions to revert them to the bad translation that we got from the developer from start.
Wow,
That is,
yeah, I can understand your frustration
that is,
there. Let's
so that
let's
is,
call it frustration, right?
yeah, frustration is a nice word. Yeah.
Yes, that's a nice. Let's keep it nice.
But I can say that this situation is one of the reasons that we recently have developed the possibility to actually block certain users on WordPress.org from suggesting strings
Yeah,
out of necessity.
yeah, I don't like blocking people at all. But if you can't reach those people, if you can't get the message over to them, like how they should do it or how they should do it better, and that's the only solution to prevent volunteers from doing work that is frustrating, in your words, then we should do that, and
Yeah.
whatever comes out of that, maybe people start reaching out through other channels and see if they can talk about their block and get to know why and how they can solve it, and with the end result in mind, of course, and that is making the people that work in the community and that dedicate their time in the community to make it a better place for them, for everyone.
Yeah, in this case, of course, it's much better to just block their possibility to upload translations rather than totally blocking them from WordPress.org.
Of course. Yeah. Then in this case, you can still be in contact with them and you don't lock them out totally. Yeah. Sounds great. Final question for you today, Tobi. What is the thing that you are looking forward to start doing in the next couple of weeks, months, if any?
Well, there is one thing I will try to do when I find some time. Right now, we've got quite a backlog of requests for new locales to be defined, and we need to check those and add these. In some cases, people may already have stopped waiting, but I know that there are several teams waiting, preparing term glossaries and so on because they want to start translating, but we haven't yet defined their locale and language in the system so that they can start working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's some work that needs to be done before the translations can be submitted for review.
Yeah.
Which should not be automated translations, to say it again. All right, Tobi, I want to thank you for your time today to explain a little bit more about your work and share these valuable tips to both translators and developers that want to enable their plugins or themes to be translatable. I'm looking forward to our next call where we might discuss some other stuff about the Polyglots team, and I want to wish you a lot of luck and fun with your next contributions to the WordPress project. And I want to thank you for your contributions to the WordPress project.
And I want to thank Kinsta for supporting me a few hours per week. That really makes a difference.
Very welcome, Tobi.